This is Luis Iga, director of Murder in the Woods, and ready, set, up your geek.
This is Yelyna De León, and ready, set, up your geek.
So one, being a super fan of horror myself, and I sent this out to some of the guys that work with me, and they kind of loved it. And I watched it twice. I watched it when I got it, and I watched it today again. I don't like, no spoilers. I know it's so Murder in the Woods, it's going to be available on video on demand tomorrow.
Yep.
I pulled it up on my screen here, and it's like pre-order now for it, so it's all ready to go. I watched it again because I was so intrigued by the ending. I'm like, what? Just
other people have to watch it.
I know. So yeah, if anything, like it was just like, whoa. So it was kind of interesting, and like the last like 2 minutes or so too was like, okay. And so now I'm like, I want more.
Good.
That's a great problem to have. We're very excited, and when people get it, and when, because it's a fun movie. It's not, we're not here for the Oscars. We're here to entertain people, to have a good time, especially in times like this, right? When you need to escape and just, have a good time with your, with your girlfriend, with your, it's an R-rated movie. So, with your, family members, but with your parents and all that. So it's a fun movie. And, you get to laugh, you get to jump. So we're very, very, very excited that, the audience is getting it, critics like you are getting it, and we're super excited for your support and helping us spread the word.
Always. It was, I love the casting of this, from a cultural standpoint, it's like, I guess you really like never really see anything like this, and when we're talking about like the entire cast being a part of the Latinx community, right? What was the thought process going into, writing this? Did you go into thinking that that's the cast was going to be that way?
Oh yeah, from day one. So Luis and I met at USC. We were a handful of the people of color that were there getting our master's degree. So from day one, we knew that it was really important for us to make films, for us, by us, and make sure that we can have people of color in lead roles that were non-stereotypical. I myself have been an actor in the business for a while, so I've played a lot of stereotypes. And I know, when we go to auditions, it's 2 lines here, 5 lines there. So with this genre, I was like, oh, great. We can do these archetypes, cast them. I mean, we auditioned everybody, but we always knew that it was going to be, lead characters, Latinx, multicultural cast. Because that way nobody knows who's going to go first, and it's a guessing game, so you got to keep guessing.
You met with a bunch of people, but you knew that you wanted to have this cast because you didn't want people to realize or think they knew who was going to go first. And so we were and I guess now not for nothing, when I saw the person that went first, I kind of, from the beginning of the movie, I was like, oh yeah, definitely that person first.
That's funny.
A lot of people are enjoying that, though. They're enjoying that process. They're like, oh yes, because this was, they're archetypes, but they're based on the mean, like, this is coming from a lot of people are like, wow, I can relate to these characters, and I have a cousin like that. I have, so it's one of those things that we wanted to make sure, again, it's a fun movie. It's not Shakespeare on the Green. I've done Shakespeare on the Green. This is a total popcorn fun movie that you can watch and rewatch and have a good time.
Exactly.
And that's listen. I had a good time watching it. It was I enjoyed the kind of the lead up to everything, and I loved all the cultural things that were put in the movie too, like these real life things, like the blessings out at the door, and it was, I was like, wow, this is so watching it, you might get a feel of it seems like it's innocent, but then because I'm watching it, I'm like, I got to remember this is a horror movie, so something horrible is going to happen at some point. And at some point, and I was totally sad about, certain character, going, because I'm like, oh no, I wanted that person to,
it's like Game of Thrones, right? Game of Thrones.
It's
like all of a sudden you love a character and boom, it's gone.
Yeah, there was a character there that was like almost, and I'm like, oh no, no, I was really rooting for that person, but that's a good thing to have, because you don't know. Like I didn't even expect, like, oh man, I'm thinking, okay, Survivor, but nope. And then and so that kind of keeps you, intrigued, like now what's going to happen. But so in reference to filming, so was there a particular, for Luis, for a particular event in your life and time where you realized that filmmaking for you was not just going to be a hobby?
Well, I was probably about 7 years old. And I was, this has been my goal since I was that age. I mean, I've been lucky. I meet a lot of people that they say they don't want to, they try things and they don't know what they want to do with their life. They try sales, they try this, they try that, and they're not happy. But luckily for me, when I was 7, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I've been pursuing that since then. It was, wow. It might sound a cliche, but it was obviously watching Star Wars with George Lucas. What I felt, because I'm an artist since I was a kid, and I love using my hands, and I love building stuff. I've been building models since I was a little kid. So when I saw the models on Star Wars and how all the make-believe and everything was like people making physical little miniature statues and all the all the planes and battleships, it was just, for me, that was a world that I wanted to discover and I wanted to get into. And then we switched to VFX, right? From special effects, now it's everything digital. So then I've been building computers since I'm about 10 years old. So I love technology. So kind of like Robert Rodriguez, right? He does a lot of things himself, and he builds his computers. The only thing that he composes music as well. I don't. But so that's what drives me. It's like the make believe, the creating of worlds that don't exist. And so I started doing that. And since a kid, I always, I used to love also doing makeup. I would buy the kits to do your cuts and the bullet holes and all that.
That's cool.
I love tricking my parents. I would get the blood pills, and I would tell them that I was, I grew up in Mexico, close to Texas, to the border in Texas. So I would go to Texas and, we're at a gas station. I would ask him, hey, can I get $1 to buy gum? And I would buy those chewable blood pills, and I would be in the car, and all of a sudden I'm bleeding. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh man, I used to do the same thing as a kid. Used to make myself with blood and kind of threw myself down the stairs a few times to fool my family. But I guess my love for horror was at a young age too. And Yelyna, same for you. What was your inspiration into getting into writing and doing and producing, and especially moving into horror? Are you a fan of horror as well?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely a fan of horror. This movie is actually a love letter to my grandmother, because when I was a kid, we would travel on a Greyhound bus all the way from Chicago to Mexico, which is 40-hour trek. And whenever we were in Texas, Texas is super big, right? So it's 20 hours. It would be really late at night, and I was bored, so she would tell me these bedtime stories, However, these bedtime stories were horror stories. So we're talking, you know, La Llorona, El Cucuy, but very, very awesome. The very awesome part of it was that she would tell it to me in first person. So it would be like she was telling me the story. Yeah. And there was always like a moral to be told. There was always something to be learned, where she was like, oh yeah, my mom told me not to go out, and I disobeyed her, and I went out and I started dancing with this man, and I looked down and he has a hoof for a foot. I'm like, what? She's like, then I came home and I realized I had his handprint, burnt into my back, and I'm like, oh my God, what? She's like, yes, I was dancing with the devil. And I'm like, ah. So she would tell me these horror stories as a kid, and I loved them. I mean, there's nothing funner than, being scared or scaring somebody. It's funner when you're scaring somebody, actually, but that was something that she always just would tell me these stories in Texas, and you look out and it's pitch black, and I'm just like, okay, great, now it's time to go to sleep. So honestly, I love the horror genre, especially slasher, because I love comedy as well, and we need that comedic relief. So that was something that for sure I was just like, okay, we need to have some comedic relief here, because I watch horror movies like this. I'm like, even with this movie, I'll share a funny story with you. I mean, Luis could tell you. I don't know how many times we watched this movie, like 3,000 times or more, right, Luis?
I mean, for me, it's been crazy, yeah.
And there was a moment where I'm sitting there because we're doing quality control and we're like looking at the edit, but I had forgotten that he made this edit. And what did I do, Luis?
She screamed like a crazy person.
It was an ugly scream. I mean, I know what's going to happen in the movie.
She scared the crap out of me. Like, what the hell?
Oh,
with this movie, it's like, hello, I know what's going to happen, but it was still like, just being in the moment and just, it was fun. But to your question as to how did I start? Well, Hollywood came knocking on my door, actually, when I was a kid. I don't know exactly how old I was, but I was a kid. This TV show came to my house. I'm from the south side of Chicago. And they asked if they could shoot there, because this was before drones. So you have to imagine like a porch, 2-story. They want to get that shot of a guy getting shot, right? And so I first, I told my grandmother, and she was like, no, tell him I said no. But then they offered her some money, and she was like, okay, tell him to come in. So for an entire week, I had like the cast, the crew. I had the late Dennis Farina in my living room, the director, everybody was there. Awesome. So I'm talking like Hollywood royalty, Hollywood, movie magic there as a kid. So it's something that I've been trying to figure out, like how it's done. I think I finally figured it out, but it's taken me this whole time to study and figure out. But that was an awesome experience. So I have to remember that every time that this business gets crazy, I'm like, okay, Hollywood came knocking on my door.
That's amazing. Yeah, that was a sign, right? Yeah, it was a sign, like, let's get started. So what advice would you give someone who wanted to have a life in creating films?
I mean, right now it's to create content is easier than ever, right? So the only thing you need is a phone, right? All the phones now have cameras. So if you want to direct, if you want to write, if you want to act, just do it. Grab your friends and start creating things. And you can put it up in YouTube. You can tell everybody. I mean, there's so many avenues right now to create content, right? And if you dedicate yourself to it and learn the structure and how to tell a story, because we've been telling stories since we're cavemen, right? So it's nothing new. And every story is very similar to the other, right? So you just have to make sure, to have the primal elements. That's why horror is so popular, right? Because it's primal. It's everybody's fear, right? It's everybody's fear that somebody's going to come and kill them or somebody's going to come and get after them. It's primal survival. So that's why horror and usually genre films that deal with mystery and suspense are so popular, because it really connects with our primal instincts of survival. So it's about that. It's about learning the structure and telling stories. And, we've heard 1,000 no's in this project for different things, right? So it's also about perseverance and, and that's it. And have your friends help you and help your friends make movies. And like they say, high tide raises all boats. So help each other and then you'll rise together.
My advice to people is do what you love and love what you do. Because at the end of the day, when you do a project, whether it's a 5-minute project or a feature film like this, I mean, you're going to be working endless hours, and it doesn't feel like work if it's something that you love. We're going on almost 6 years of this project. And let me tell you, you have to love what you do. Because if you don't, you're investing 6 years of your life, sometimes, months, you never know. So I would say just, follow your heart. If you want to write, write. If you want to act. People ask me that all the time, and I'm like, just do it, And every time you do a project, you're learning new skill sets. You're learning new things, with the technology right now. I mean, it changes so fast. So it doesn't matter, if you have the best camera or not. What matters is that you're telling a story that's authentic to you, and that you're telling, your stories, because there's so many stories yet to be told, especially from people of color, and we need your voices out there. So I will say, just write it, just do it, and get it out there.
Yeah.
The horror genre is such, and being a fan in that, I'm like, all right, I love this. And then it's like, oh, maybe it's kind of weird. But then when I've gone to, I didn't realize there was such a big world till years ago. I went to a convention for the first time, a horror convention. I was like, oh, and there's this like massive world of people. And then I like kind of connected with all these different people, and I'm like, whoa, this is like bigger than I imagined it was. And then I started seeing, I mean, there's like, pages online with millions of people and hundreds of thousands of fans. And I'm like, wow. And, you knew that, you had your like classic horrors and everything like that, but there's a lot of love for independent horror. Like no other, like there could be, some other like low budget, non-genre specific film, but people don't care about that. But if it's a low budget horror, like when you go into a page and hey, can you suggest the, top 5, or they're all going to be independent horror films. I mean, because the creators are actually, they're putting their blood, sweat, and tears into everything. And, and I can, feel that in here, like, like this is, some of the lines that I was like, maybe these are like some personal lines. And I saw an interview that you guys did with Latin Horror the other day, and that line that Chelsea makes, like, I do love you, but not right now.
Sometimes.
And you're like, sometimes, but not right now. And you're like, I've said that to somebody before.
I think we all have.
Yeah,
it's like, it's hysterical. But it's like the comic relief and those slasher type films, like, they mesh so well together. And it's like unusual. It's like, could it be really serious horror, but also interpret some comic features, and they work. You'd think that those two things would clash, but now it's like, this is what people are making. You have these type of films out there. And while you were writing it, is there anything in particular that you wanted to make sure that was in the story, in this film, that you wanted people to see once it went onto the screen?
Oh, yes. So when I was writing it, I always wanted to make sure that we could tell a universal story, but also have cultural references in there. That's been like the biggest battle and struggle, honestly, as a writer, is just, having your vision told the way that it's supposed to be told. Because usually if somebody doesn't understand something, they just kind of dismiss it. They're like, oh no, you have to change that. That's not the way, because as a writer, you get a lot of notes. Everybody gives you notes. You get notes from, from everybody. Everybody wants to give you notes, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, when you have a vision and you're like, okay, culturally, this is the story that I'm telling, and this is what is true to me. Like you were saying earlier about the blessings, right? That is something that is culturally specific. That doesn't mean that everybody in the world does that. No, absolutely not. However, this character in this story does do that, right? So that was a great thing that, because Luis and I come from similar backgrounds, I didn't have to fight with him as far as the cultural references. I didn't have to explain anything. He got it, and that's something that we're lucky as independent filmmakers. We're able to put those authentic moments in there, just like you're talking about, those little things in the script from day one that was something that was really important for me, because we don't get to see our stories up on the big screen. That's as far as like from a cultural standpoint. And it's not about preaching and being like, oh, this is the way it is. It's just literally about showing those authentic moments. So to me, that was really important, is those cultural references, because like I said, this is something that, Our emotions, especially right now, like I feel like we are living in a horror film as it is, so we need that comedic relief, right? But our emotions, you know, we can go from 0 to 100. We can go from being happy to being scared to, you know, to being funny at that moment, you know, in the same minute, right? So that was something that I wanted to make sure we had that roller coaster ride as well, of all these different characters giving you different emotions that you can relate to. But I think the thing that stuck out was really just the cultural references, and they're in there, so I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, definitely. Luis,
for me,
same question. Yeah.
And for me, it was the first time I worked with an A-list actor, right? So working with Danny Trejo was, you know, a dream come true. He's such a nice man and such a humble man, and just having him on set and working with him, learning from him, and also, you know, we also had an amazing young cast, so also working with them. And for me as a director, I love working with the actors, discovering things in the scene, you know, going through the script, going through the blocking. However, we didn't have a lot of time to do a lot of the things that I love just because we were limited. Every day we would lose we shot this in only 15 days. And every day we would lose about 2 to 3 hours just, working around. So we had fire safety advisors that were, you know, every day they would tell us to do something different regarding the safety, right? So, because every day you get a different person. So one guy would say the electric lines are good here. The next day they would say they're not. You have to switch them over there. So I never got a complete day of shooting. So I literally had to think on my feet and throw my plan away and just, you know, and I only had like 1, 2, 3 takes max, you know, to do every time. So it was challenging, but what stuck with me is that it gave me confidence that I'm able to do it. I'm able to think on my feet and just think and switch things around to make it work.
That sounds, you know, I love that. First of all, Danny, you know, he like makes every film great. Like it's like people will also just be drawn because he's in the movie. Like it's so crazy. He's, you know, it's like he's like the godfather of these type of these films too. And people love to see Danny Trejo in anything. Like it's amazing. And I loved his, just, you know, he's the sheriff here, and it's like, oh man, I enjoyed some of the scenes here, and it's so crazy because, you know, no spoilers.
It's hard to talk about this movie.
It's like, so
it's full of like twists and turns, so you don't know what to say.
Yeah,
it's been very challenging in all the interviews. So that's why I can't wait till this movie's out for a few months.
Yes.
Then we can have like a spoiler session.
That would actually be great. We actually wrote,
I will say that every time that Danny comes out on the big screen,
and
he comes out on the big screen, people literally start clapping, cheering. We were at the drive-in and people just started honking and just like lights going. It was insane. It was like as though he would have walked off of the screen and like came and greeted you, basically. You know, that was awesome.
It's great. This happens, and this happens no matter what movie he's in.
Yeah.
It's like he comes out and it's like he's there. Like in any movie theater that I've been in, like the crowds, even if he's like in a movie and he like dies in 2 seconds, the crowd's like screaming all crazy for him. Like I'm like, man, I said that's someone who like carries some weight. And I love that. So we actually did 2 reviews for this movie. So we did the one we put out was spoiler free, and we also did a spoiler review. So that'll come out later.
Okay.
Yeah, we do. I've been doing this a little while, so we always do 2 for each movie. We do a spoiler review and we do a spoiler free, and then we put the spoiler free one out, and then let that marinate for a little while, and then, you know, when it's, you know, been out for a little bit, then we put out the spoiler review. And, you know, I think that, and it is tough to kind of talk about this because there's so many things.
Very tough. We could revisit that ending later.
Oh, man,
that's one thing that people are like,
I would love that.
They've been comparing it to Inception. I'm like, really? Wow. What can you think? It's like,
but because we were on the movie theaters when we were playing with Inception. We're in the same. We're like it was our poster in Inception, and we're like, that's kind of cool.
That's awesome. So, what films have been the most inspiring or influential to you, and why?
Yeah, you want to start?
As far as just in general as a filmmaker, or with this movie?
As a filmmaker,
Okay, because there's so many. I mean, I have watched everything. I love international cinema. One of my favorite movies is Cinema Paraiso. It's an Italian film. That's not in the horror genre, but that's been one of those films. There's also another movie called Central Station, which they're very character-driven stories. So I was talking about international cinema. I love learning about different cultures. So those two films have really stuck out to me as a filmmaker because they make me go through a roller coaster of emotions where I'm like happy, I'm sad, I'm crying, I'm cheering. So I feel like those movies have inspired me as a filmmaker where I'm like, okay, if I can't make a film as good as that, meaning taking people on that roller coaster ride, then I don't want to make movies, whether it's, whether I'm writing or producing them or acting in them. So those two movies have really stuck out. In the horror genre, there's a bunch of other films that I love. I Know What You Did Last Summer, Scream, those slashers were very inspirational for this movie. Kathy Bates in Misery. I'm like, if when I write, I'm like, I think of like characters that are at that level because I'm like, okay, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I love, because I know people like that. I think we all know people like that.
Yeah.
Or they could be like that. It depends, But yeah, those are the movies I would say.
Awesome, thank you.
I mean, for me, I would have to obviously from the beginning Star Wars, that whole universe that that George created is amazing. But then down the line, I grew up in Mexico, so I used to. Have you ever heard of El Santo? El Santo is like a Mexican wrestler with a silver mask. It's very popular in Mexican art culture. So I watched a lot of those, the scary ones. They had like El Santo versus the mummies, El Santo versus the vampire women. So like very D-type horror. So I grew up in Mexico watching that, and then from the U.S. I ended up, I grew up watching, the same Wes Craven movies and Mr. Carpenter's movies, like Halloween, I Know What You Last Summer. Halloween and Friday the 13th, and then I Know What You Last Summer and all those. So those were what inspired me to inspire for this movie. But on a personal level too, a movie that I really it's not a favorite in a lot of people, but for me it was very personal because I had to decide between life and between family and my business, right? If I wanted to pursue a relationship or stick to my dream of filmmaking, and that's The Family Man from Brett Ratner.
Oh, thank you. Awesome. Yelyna, I'm sorry. So they say that Yelyna. They say that there's like only 6 stories or maybe 12 that that have ever been written, and we see it, or we've all seen it all before. So and with your film, it's funny because I have this question. It's like what your film I think kind of answers it really, because it's something that we've never seen before. But what do you do to keep things fresh? Or like when you're in your writing process, and is there anything that you do to subvert the process to keep it original?
Well, it is true. There's only about 7 stories. You can ask Shakespeare. You can go to the Bible, and I think that has to do with the 7 deadly sins. I don't know. Yeah. So yes, we've all heard these stories before. I think when I was writing this, there were certain actors that I had in mind. So those voices were very clear to me as far as like their how they would speak, their mannerism, things like that. So I really try to tell a story from a perspective of somebody, like from my perspective, right? As though I'm on this journey. If this, like Luis and I really wanted to make a film that was the type of film that we would have loved to have seen when we were growing up. So I think that that was like the most important thing. It's like, I always ask myself, what do I want people to feel at the end of this movie? Right. And what roller coaster ride do I want to take them on? And honestly, like you said earlier, it's like, we both put our love into this. We've sacrificed a lot. And so it was one of those things. It's like, if we're going to make this, like, it's got to be, you know, that movie that we would have loved to see. And what a better place to see it than at the drive-in theater. I mean, talk about a nostalgic feeling. We were there at the drive-in theater, like, oh my God, we actually, you know, made this movie with lead characters and non-stereotypical roles that happen to be played by people of color in lead roles, which is amazing. So that from the get-go is something that's like, you know, that structure is always there. The slashers, you know, we all know that structure. But it's one of those movies you can rewatch over and over. I'm a big whodunit fan. So Agatha Christie, I mean, I love escape rooms. I love all that kind of murder mystery stuff. So it's one of those things where it's like, I just have to keep people guessing. And I wrote it as though it was a Guess Who, like the game. I don't know if you remember that. It's kind of old school. But I love all those games, you know, board games.
From a viewer and a fan perspective, I was watching this film and not, how can I put this? So watching like other, like Scream or any of these other films, it's like, okay, so you're trying to figure, okay, who's the killer here? I did not, through most of this movie, I was not even thinking of who the killer was. I did, because in those films, you know that, you know, there's some person or people stalking these people and they're copycats. In this movie, you know, there was this kind of thing that you didn't know if there was going to be some kind of supernatural element or a practical element.
Right. Is that goes back to the authenticity of our culture, my culture.
Yeah. Because
when I'm in my bedroom, if something moves, and I'm talking about like flying across the room, because it happens, right? I'm like, is that a ghost? Is that a spirit? There's always that supernatural element that's a possibility, you know. And then my mom's like, no, it's just the wind, you know. So like there's that scene where they walk in and there's a rocking chair moving and they're like, oh my God, is it a ghost? So those are the kind of things, honestly, that I wanted to make sure, like, you don't know. It could be this, it could be that, you know. In another section, when we do the spoilers, we can talk about it some more. But that's all I will say right now, is that the supernatural is always a possibility. And I love that, because you just don't know.
This was, and I'll tell you what, that's like smart writing. It's genius. Because you put, you know, as the viewer, you know, because if I'm sitting here like already know what's going to happen, you know, then it kind of makes the movie less fun. But as I'm, you know, watching it, you know, and there's the, you know, you get a line like, you know, some say it's a killer, some say it's a demon, and it's like, oh, so now I'm like, well, wait, is what? And so and then it kind of the reveal was like, oh,
what is it? Who knows?
Effed up, you know? But it was really good, and you can see those,
what is it?
Yeah, you can see those cultural undertones too, and it's, you know, it was really great, and it played out and it showed in this particular movie. And you know,
because
you don't get that.
I mean, because we lived it. It's part of our culture. I mean, like, you know, the altar to the death, you know, we do, you know, to remember ours. I mean, I have one here right in front of me right here that I have from my ancestors, you know, that I light candles and I sage, and, you know, it's just part of our culture that we grew up. So all the cultural references, we live them, you know. There are, you know, they're not based on a Google search, right? Like a lot of Hollywood movies, right? They have a team of like researchers, and, you know, now everything's Google, right? So no, we actually lived it, right? So that's what is important, to have diverse, you know, people in front and behind of the camera, because we bring different perspectives that happen to us. And like Yel said, when we were talking about the movie, it was never an issue of, oh, that doesn't happen. That's not real. Like, you know, and we had to fight that in, you know, when we're, you know, at USC with, you know, professors that are not part of our community,
right,
grew up in a different world. We were questioned all the time, right? Like, I think one of the professors, Yelyna, had you know, this big picture of the patriarch, of, you know, the mother or the father yeah, every household in Mexico, when you get in, the first thing you see is going to be your parents' marriage wedding or your mother's big picture, and then your in my case, my sister's like quinceañeras, and then my sister's wedding pictures, and then my parents in the middle, and then my mom's. So it's and they're big, they're huge. It's like right in your face, right? And that's part of our culture. It's so that's why you can't you can't make it up because it's yours. It's your DNA that you are putting out there.
I always find that it's really great when you bring in a lot of culture into the filmmaking industry. One, because not only do you know all the rules or the have all the capabilities of what's going on in your culture, but if you're growing up also in American culture, it's like you have the best of both worlds. So when you're doing these things, you understand both references. And so there's people, like you're saying, like in school, there's people that don't understand the other side because they haven't lived it.
Yeah. And
so it's like, this doesn't make sense to them, but it makes sense to you because you've been there.
Yeah.
So I think I always, find that, people have lived both cultures, multiple cultures that do film, they have a better idea or understanding of a worldview of what these films should be. And I think that kind of pulled off here in this movie particularly.
Yeah, no, we appreciate, when people get it and, people like you that get it and understands our perspective, because yes, I mean, movies like this have been done a lot of times, but just giving these cultural references, we have a lot of twists and turns that keep you on your feet. But the way we, intended to challenge the genre was with the casting, right? That's, every movie, like you said, every story has been made. So it's like, how do you make a difference? How do you challenge a genre? And what we decided to do was challenge the genre with the casting.
Yeah.
But again, because it was not stereotypical and was very fluid, it doesn't hit you in the head. A lot of times where executives were looking at it, they were like, this is just a horror movie. Which was amazing because that's what we intended to do. Like just a regular, broad market, general market horror movie that happens to have, brown faces, people of color, on the big screen. So we succeeded. But at the time of the distribution, they were like, well, there's, we've seen this before. Like they didn't get it. So when people get it, it's
not in Spanish, right?
Huh? Oh yeah, like for example,
they were like, it's not in Spanish.
There's no cholos.
They were saying it's not in Spanish. It's not a Latino film. I'm like, what?
Or it's like, yeah, I mean that's the first. Whenever say hey, we have this Latino movie, they would ask me, is it in Spanish? Or they would say, oh, it's not. They're always looking for the cholos, for the for the cartels, and that's not what makes it. So it's yeah. So it's been it's been an uphill battle, but we're happy we're here. And again, people like you, critics like you that get it, and people that love the movie and spread the word. Even though we don't have millions of dollars to market this, we have you guys, and even if it's a little, yeah. It adds up.
Yeah.
We're 350 million people. 230 million in the U.S. So I mean, there's a lot of people.
Yeah, it definitely adds. So I have just a couple more here. And what role has the film festivals played in your the release of your film, and why are they necessary? And how do you get the most out of them?
Festivals, well, the festivals are very helpful because it's the first general audience that's going to see your movie. Right. So every time you're doing a movie as a filmmaker, you show it to your friends, you show it to, to other fellow filmmakers. And for me, it's so funny because a lot of the comedy didn't play with them. Right. So I'm like, all these jokes that we had, like, they're not working. We're like, so we actually ended up cutting some of them because they were not hitting. Right. But then we realized a big lesson was that, when you show a movie to your filmmaker friends, and they're very critical, right? Yeah. They're not watching it as an audience member, just relaxing and enjoying. They're there because they want to give you notes and want to help you. So they're just focused in what's wrong, where's the mistake, So So yeah, so when you're doing a movie and it's independent, I mean, we don't have the budget to go test it professionally, right? So, just make sure when you test it with your friend, making sure it's your friends and family and not like filmmakers.
I will say that also the networking part of the film festivals is amazing because we just did an interview with Latin Horror, and we realized that we were at the same table, the winners table, 2 years ago at Macabre up in Long Island. So the film community is very small, but also like, the niches. So like the horror community, everyone that you meet is like, they're making a movie, they're in the process of it, whether it's pre-production or production. So it's really about supporting. So I would say the festivals are a great way to go out and just network and meet the people that are also making the movie so that you can support them and they can support you. Because really that's what it's about. Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, my background is in marketing. Before I was a filmmaker, I was a graphic design, marketing, advertising. So my marketing side too is like a test, right? Again, we don't have money to test the movie. So you see people's reaction to the movie, and then you start seeing the potential, right? You start seeing, oh, wow, it's really, I mean, every filmmaker wants to make the best movie they can make. They don't go into set saying, you know what, I'm going to make a crappy movie. No, nobody says that, right? Everybody's like, but again, situations happen, things happen, budgetary constraints. So we realized that we had something meaningful in the festival circuit. We sold out, and then after we sold out, people stayed. Like in Chicago Latino Film Festival, we sold out a Saturday night screening, but we also sold out a Monday night screening in a theater that's 250 seats, right?
LA sold out in 24 hours.
I saw that.
So
I saw that. It's amazing.
So you start seeing the potential, and that's why when we were getting offers from distributors, we're like they wouldn't get it, right? They would not get it. And then a lot of times that we had these screenings, the executives are super busy. They wouldn't be able to make it and see it with an audience. Like one of the investors that came later on board for, to help us in the distribution and the finishing funds of the movie is because he saw it with an audience. He came to the screening and he saw people's reactions and he's like, oh, wow, there's something here. Right. So that's why it's important to see it at a big screen with an audience, because, when you're sending your movie, you're sending links to the distributors and they're watching on their laptop, on their phone. So they don't get the full experience of the film.
And the sound in a big screen is different, especially for horror, right? Which is like 90% sound. So definitely I would say it's very important to go to festivals for sure.
Awesome. One final question here. So, and this probably goes without saying, do you feel like filmmakers have a responsibility to culture? Do you feel like being a creative person requires you to give back or tell, a story or to not do a particular thing in a film?
Yeah. I mean, I do feel, a sense of giving back. I mean, again, that's what, when Yelyna and I met, our goal was to do this type of movie where we give opportunities to minorities, Latinos, people of color in the big screen, right? And that's, before this movie, the way we met, it was, we were doing a friend of mine came to me and he wanted to make a movie about somebody he knew that was a domestic violence survivor. And that's actually how I met Yelyna. I was looking for a writer for that project. And we met at USC and I pitched her the story and she was like, yeah, I know a lot of, people that been through the same situation, that are survivors. So actually we're doing that because, it was an inspirational story for Latinos of this amazing woman, right? So then it was too much money. So we ended up, the investor, my friend, the investor was like, okay, I cannot give you this much, but I'll give you this much. What can you do? Right? So then we ended up doing something that we could do with that money. So again, it is, as an artist, I mean, that's our goal because, we don't live, I mean, we sacrifice a lot to do what we love, right? So yeah, I say, yeah, we have a responsibility to tell stories, to inspire, to entertain.
Yelyna? Do filmmakers have a responsibility to culture? And do you feel like being a creative person that it requires you to give back, to tell certain stories and to not to, do certain things in films?
So do I feel the responsibility to give back?
Yes.
Is that the question?
Do you feel, as a filmmaker, do you feel a responsibility to culture? Do you feel a responsibility to give back and to tell certain stories or not?
absolutely feel responsibility of culture. When that TV show came to my house, when Hollywood came knocking on my door and I answered, that was given to me because this has been a lifelong process of actually making movies and telling stories. So as a storyteller, I feel like I've been in the rooms where I'm the only person of color, and it is my responsibility whenever I have the opportunity to tell stories about my community, about my, my culture, to do that, because that's what I know, and I know how to do it authentically, at least from my own perspective, which is something that, it's not an easy thing to do, because, you need a lot of money to make movies. As far as like the marketing goes, a lot of the movies that are out right now that we were up against, they had like $10 million, $13 million in marketing, which we don't have. So I feel like when you have that opportunity, definitely write what you know, because no one's going to be able to write the story that you can tell from your cultural lens. I love giving back to the community. Every summer, I teach classes in Boyle Heights. I also have done it in Chicago and in Mexico. And I love inspiring the youth, because I feel like they're the ones that are going to, they have to tell the stories that are going to be carried on for generations, because if we're not telling our own stories, then other people are going to continue telling our stories. And that's why, it's always the brown and black person that's, the bad person, and we're getting arrested, and we're, have the thickest accents you've ever heard. And, all those stereotypes that I myself have played on television and in films, because that's all there is. So I definitely feel responsibility. And I'm very excited though for the future generations, because, like we said, we have a phone now. So guess what? You can make your own projects with your friends and upload them and tell your story. So when people, see this movie and they see like, wow, Brown is beautiful, these are lead actors in these roles, I hope that inspires them to say, you know what, if they can do it, I can do it too. I can be a lead actor, I can be a writer, I can be a director. Ooh. And that's my goal. I hope to inspire some people.
This is a great message. Hey, listen, I want to thank you guys for coming and doing this. And so we have Murder in the Woods. Murder in the Woods will be available tomorrow. Yep. Right. September 18th on demand everywhere. And we're going to have, I'm probably going to watch it a third time. I'm convincing some people to do like a watch party. So I have a lot of people that really love horror. So when I show them this, we're probably going to do a watch party for it, because I did really love the movie.
So we're so excited. Thank you so much. Yeah, and people go to murderinthewoodsmovie.com, murderinthewoodsmovie.com. The logos will be there tomorrow of all the providers that have it, so they can just click and buy it or rent.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
You.
All right.
Have a good day.
You have a good one.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Hey there, freaks and geeks. If you like this content and would like to view more like it, please visit us on all of our social platforms: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also visit us on our YouTube page /UpYourGeek, and you can visit upyourgeek.com, where you can experience a new standard in geek pop culture and entertainment media, because no matter what fandom you're passionate about, we have it waiting here for you. Ready, set, up your geek.